Welcome back to the Other Side Lifestyle Podcast with Jim and Aram. Don't forget to use code OSL at curednutrition.com, as well as code Aram at Legion what?
LegionAthletics.com and code Aram10 at iconmeals.com. So just put some fucking money in our pockets, folks. We're not doing well.
He says our, but it's his pockets. We get nothing for Cured Nutrition. We just have good people that want to give you a little discount.
Fine, put 12 cents in my pocket for every fucking supplement you order. It's not gonna
every
save
time
my life.
you buy Legion Athletics with code Aram, he gets more bags of protein powder sent to his house.
That's
Today, we have a guest that we're excited about because he's just like us. He's just a regular dude who actually does things right.
He's actually arguably a better person than we are.
Definitely arguably a better person than we are.
Yeah, like I aspire to be like Adam.
Is that genuine or is that
it's not
true?
No,
it is. No, trust me.
He plans on staying in a dark hole the rest of his life, Adam.
Sometimes I look at a man like this who runs a business and has a family, and I'm like, oh man, isn't that nice? Until I realize I hate children and I don't want to get married.
That's understandable. Today we have Adam Badger.
That's a great intro.
That was pretty good, I think. Yeah. We're excited to have him. We all connected on Instagram because you found this podcast, correct? And then that's how you kind of
found us. I think it was Brad. Originally, it was
Brad.
Wasn't it Sober Bodybuilder?
So I originally had heard Aram's name dropped like on Andrew Coates said it on some podcast, and I had heard that name, but then I didn't I just heard it, and then I saw people posting about the Coaches Summit last year, and I happened to I don't honestly know why, but I stumbled upon Brad Jensen's podcast with you on it back from I think it was 2020, and I just really resonated with the stuff you were saying. And I actually messaged you on Instagram and was like, hey, that podcast really resonated with me a lot. I kind of unloaded on some of my stress at the moment on Aram, which he was very kind to hear and be a sounding board for me. And then I found your guys' podcast and I listened to that and I really resonated with the podcast and both of you guys. And then I connected with Jim and it's kind of just been from there. Actually, Jim started sharing some of my stuff, which was a huge, was very humbling to see.
Yeah, the Adam, I obviously am the self-professed analogy king. All right.
Yeah.
And people enjoy my analogies. Adam is the only one out there that he'll post these analogies. I'm like, you motherfucker. That was a good analogy. So I like the way that you communicate your message. It just is very authentic. It's very real. It's very practical. So that's what I've really liked about just seeing your stuff online. It's that
means a lot to me, honestly, guys. I think I've kind of been in my own little bubble for 10 years now as a coach. So, especially once I started my own business, about almost 6 years ago, I just haven't really gotten out there and socialized much with other coaches as much as I probably should have. So sometimes you get stuck in that bubble and you're I think some people who get stuck in the bubble think, oh, my stuff's the best. This is the only way to do it. Whereas my reaction has been do I suck? Do I not know what I'm doing? Let me start to see what other people are doing. And then when I started listening to your podcast, hearing you guys and also hearing the coaches you brought on, the way they talk, I'm like, oh shit. I guess I am doing stuff, kind of the right way. Because they're saying a lot of this. Yeah, it's validation. Yeah. They're saying they communicate to the clients the way I do. They're not doing shady stuff the way I don't want to do it. And we can get into that stuff too. But I've been through business coaching mentorships and stuff like that, where a lot of the way to market fitness, I just don't resonate with. And it's finding a balance for me between staying aligned with what feels right to me, but also obviously being able to provide a living for my family, so it's the longer path.
Yeah. And me and Aram have been that's how we met through a certification that led to us starting to go to conferences together. And we've been through all that. And I think we probably touched on that a little bit when I was on your show.
Yeah.
But there's a lot out there, but you always start thinking until you get out and you get around other coaches and you meet them and you see what goes on. you realize, just like with the stuff that we're teaching clients, there is no trick, there is no hack. It's like you kind of do what fits best for you and what sits well with you morally and how you do things. But yeah, there's a lot of BS out there, but the more you are around the right people, you start realizing, okay, there are a lot of good coaches, because you do start to get to a point like, is everybody just doing quick fix BS, challenge garbage, treating people like a lab rat? And I'm just over here trying to do the right thing and struggling.
And I've also noticed a trend with coaches where it seems like they are like this fitness person, and then they reach a certain level of success in business, and then all they talk about is business and how they're like running like this 7-figure company, and they're buying this new car, and how they're investing 6 figures a year in their own coaches and their mentorships, and like that's all they talk about. And then I'm sitting here like, I literally was wrestling my 3-year-old before I got on this call. I'm just like, am I doing something wrong? He always wins. He always wins. Yeah. Oh, dude, today was a day. We were talking, today was a day, man. So this is how my day started off. After my morning clients, my morning workout, I come in, side story. He's been complaining for 2 days that his ear hurt. So like, he has an ear infection. He won't let us touch it. So then somehow I just kind of brushed on the back of his ear, and I'm like, oh no, he's got a fucking tick. That's how the day started.
Is there a little ring going on?
No, he's okay. I think he's all right. Okay. We're getting it tested and stuff. And then at one point he without us noticing, took a giant dump in the fucking cushion of the couch, like in the crevice.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. He defecated?
He defecated
diaperless
in the crevice of the couch cushion. So Ram, if you're questioning whether or not you want to have kids,
no, there's no question. I definitely don't.
So like it's just like a pile of human shit in the crevice. And it's like a crevice, so like it's smeared up the sides, and then you gotta pull the cushion out.
It sounds like a Wait,
how old is he? He's 3.
He just turned 3. It's honestly, it's not something that happens normal. It was literally just because he's been sick the last couple of weeks. I think he just like had he ripped off his diaper, and then I just didn't notice in time.
Now, are you allowed to physically strike a child after that happens?
It's encouraged in most communities.
What is that? Isn't that that's like a Daniel Tosh joke where it's like, under no circumstances should you ever. And it's like, yeah, but what if he shits in the crevice of your couch in the middle of a work day, and
then you beat him unmercifully?
Bill Burr has a bit on that, like, you should never hit a woman. Never? Or there's never a reason. That's what it was. Not you shouldn't hit a woman. There's never a reason to hit a woman. No? Not even not one reason?
Like, what if she's coming out? What if she's coming out with you with a knife? Like, what if?
Like, he gives all these examples, and it was funny. But anyway,
it's like no regrets. Well, I'll tell my side of the story, because nobody cares about what Jimmy thinks.
What's your side of what? Pooping in a couch?
No, about
the coaching space.
No, we're just gonna keep jerking Adam off. Shut up.
That's fine,
dude.
Am I allowed?
It's a nice change of pace for me, so I like it.
May I please have my chance with his genitals for a minute, since you already did your job? Okay, cool. He's fine. So Adam was one of the first people I thought of to invite to do the virtual presentation as the pregame for the Real Coaches Summit in March. We're going to do a virtual seminar online with about 40 or so coaches. And I'm not going to say lower or mid-level, because we don't really know how to quantify anybody anymore, because it's really
like notoriety wise, probably.
So what I'm going to say is lesser known. That's probably the best way to state it. So these folks are not like in the limelight. Maybe their names not getting tossed around a lot. They're kind of in the shadows, but they're doing really good work. And what my mission was to bring these folks to light. Adam was one of the first people I thought of. The practicality, like Jimmy said, of what he puts out there. He's helping real people solve real problems in the most practical ways possible. And folks, I bet you're going to get more out of this episode with this guy than you will out of the PhDs that we bring on here, than we will out of the sports science people that we get on here, because this guy's talking to real people just like you who are listening with the bullshit that you guys are going through. He's fighting that battle every single day. And he's got the tactics to be able to help you with that stuff. And I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to start talking.
No pressure.
No
pressure.
So he put a presentation for me together that was called "Getting People Away from Tracking and into More Sustainable Living." So a lot of people that track their food think that this is like a a prison sentence forever. Like, I'm going to have to track forever. How am I going to know how much I'm eating? Blah, 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 blah. And Adam has put together a 30-minute presentation, slightly over
36.
36 minutes. Fucking cocksucker. But hey, he wanted to squeeze
Don't worry,
out
mine will be 24 or less.
Perfect. So it'll wash
out.
out. Yeah, it'll wash. And I thought that the material that was in it was fantastic. So Adam, talk about that evolution. So we get somebody who can handle the tracking aspect, and that obviously gives us a lot of information as coaches to be able to manipulate outcomes. And this is what so many folks are hesitant to do, right? How many people have come to you and said, Adam, I don't get it. I'm not losing weight. I eat so good.
Yeah.
Right. So would take that person, that avatar, that person who tells you, I eat so good, I don't get why I'm not getting results.
And for context, Adam trains people in person as well as online, and you're doing the nutrition and the programming.
Yeah. So online coaching is grown to be like the main source of income for my business, and that is nutrition and programming. What I found for my clientele, not to, say this goes across the board, for my clientele, I don't think the programming is that complicated or complex, because yeah. So it's literally, it's more so, I offer the programming as a way to supplement what we're doing with their lifestyle, because if they're just off and I don't know what they're doing, then we can run into hurdles that way. So I usually try to push people towards both. I still do
talk about that for a second, because I've had this before where it's like, well, let me just buy a program, or let me just have you do my nutrition, but not the programming. I have another coach who does that. Talk about the importance of pairing nutrition and fitness together and why it's so critical.
I think that most people just don't understand. I think a lot of people think in terms of, what is, what's the phrase that they always ask? Oh, what's more important, nutrition or training, right? And I think when people are asking that, what they're actually asking is, which one of these can I slack off on and still see results? Because they want to hear, because what they want to hear is that, oh, it's 80% nutrition. So then they think, well, if it's 80% nutrition and that's really difficult, which it is, and I can't do that, that gives them an excuse not to really pursue the nutrition aspect. But if they know that 20% is only exercise, they don't really have to learn too much about it. They can kind of just keep doing what they're doing, and then nothing really changes. So what I found, again, always speaking from like the clients that I've dealt with, is that most people who come in, they just don't know how to train with the proper intensity, and they don't have the patience to like stick with a program for a long period of time, which, without getting too boring, like, you need your body to adapt. You need to just like introduce the same stimulus over and over and over again and gradually progress it. Most people don't have the patience for that. So they're usually doing, some sort of HIIT class or a mix of HIIT and yoga and spin and all that stuff. And then the nutrition piece is the piece they know they need to work on, but they don't really understand it. So they've done maybe Weight Watchers. They've done a $200 macro cycle a few times. They just don't understand the relationship between the two. So to go back to your original question, how do they, kind of work together? With nutrition, you're supplementing the effort you're putting in the gym, right? So the nutrition is there to help you recover, but the nutrition is also there as a bookend on the other side to give you the energy to perform into the workout, right? So most people, they don't make that connection. They just think, I checked my workout box and I've tried to check my nutrition box, and that's really it. But also, people don't want to spend years learning how to do this stuff. So
nor do they really have.
Nor do they have to.
We don't have the amount of time, dude. Like, most people are not going to be clients for multiple years.
Yeah, exactly. So what I like to get people on is like, hey, listen, if you're willing to switch your workouts and kind of change up your style a little bit, I'll admit to you that at first you may think they're boring, but once you start getting results from them, you'll really enjoy them. I actually recently had a client who started up with me, and she just signed up for programming. She didn't think she needed any help with nutrition. And we just switched her programming from doing like this online app that she was doing. She's doing like CrossFit workouts to more like traditional strength workouts. So she went from like 5 workouts a week to 3 full body a week, progressive overload, and all the stuff we know is true. And she didn't really have to make too much of a tweak to her nutrition to start seeing results. So that shows you how powerful, like, if you just really do put time to changing one of these habits, you will see results. But now we've already had conversations with, oh, wow, this is really working. What can I do better with my nutrition? And then we'll get to, and then she's, she did 3 months, and now she signed on for another 6 months. So now we can start implementing some nutrition changes. So long-winded answer, but to answer your like original question, client comes in, they claim to be eating good. They maybe tracked macros in the past, but they don't see why they're not seeing results. The problem that I've run into a lot, and I went over this in the presentation, is that most people don't even understand what macros are or why they even work. So macros, which used to be a very like viable option for people, has become what I believe just another fad diet that people do and they fall on and off of. Do you guys like see that as an issue pop up?
When you start with people, is that the protocol where you are teaching them the macros and then trying to like then potentially graduate them from that, or are you taking a different approach?
Over the years, it's changed. When I first started coaching nutrition, like years and years ago, I was like, "Oh, macros." I would assign people macros, and then the problems that I ran into was that like even if you gave them a swing where you're like, "Hey, you can land 15 grams over under on these carbs, 5 grams over under on these fats," they just didn't understand why it was working. And I was constantly, even if you scroll back to like 2019, I was putting out content on like macros aren't magic numbers. Like these are guidelines to control your total calories.
Yes.
You can't just plug them into your phone and then things are going to happen. So what I started doing to answer your question is now what I do is I don't even give people macros. If they enjoy tracking their food or they see value in it, we'll do a calorie range and a protein range. And by following what I use and what I describe in the presentation is I use more of a meal template approach. How many meals do, Janet like to eat per day? What are some common foods she could see herself eating? And then I build out a meal template. Let's say, just to use an example, let's say it's 3 meals a day and a snack. Each of those meals would have 2 to 4 protein options, 2 to 4 carb options, a produce option. I don't really make specific fat recommendations all the time because I find that people just tend to overeat fat anyway. They get it in somehow. So
such a fucking problem, dude.
Yeah. So like I always say this too, and this is another kind of coaching. One of my clients, I've been coaching for like 6 years now. He calls it like trainer voodoo. He uses that term a lot when I like it. But one thing I do is I always make their meal template towards the lower end of their calorie range, knowing that there's going to be discrepancies. Yeah. So when they add that extra dressing, when they add the cheese, when they have the bagel instead of the sourdough toast, it accounts for those discrepancies that are probably going to happen. And then they start to learn, oh, if I just follow these basic skills, I don't need to meticulously track. And when they're doing this, you can also apply that strategy to like something like eating out. So I cue them on, hey, when you're going to eat out, instead of worrying about how to macro Tetris this meal into your day, why don't you work on that restaurant probably serves a protein, carb, and a produce meal. Order that and just see how you feel. Yeah. Does that kind of answer frame up like what I do at first?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, I understand the idea of like thinking macros are a fad type thing based on how they started, where it was people were just, how do I squeeze my Pop-Tart, my donut, and my protein shake, and my protein bar, and hitting macros. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of two different approaches of they're getting their macros by making sure they're getting a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of maybe their carbs, a certain amount of their fats. And I think, there could be different approaches for different people,
So what I described this too in the talk is that like I do have some clients who do track their macros.
Yeah.
These are usually more advanced clients who want to make like, they're super consistent. They're looking to make those extra 10% of changes. Yeah. Like when a client stands out, she's a beast. She's 49 years old. She can deadlift like 300 pounds on a trap bar. If you saw her, like she's legit like lean and strong.
Yep.
She tracks macros because for her, like we want to make sure on her training day, she's getting more carbs, For the average person, I don't really utilize that. Now, I'm not saying though that macros are bad or that they don't have value. I just think the way people have been taught them, or there's been a miscommunication. The same way that like, for some people, intermittent fasting may help them, but they think that the fasting is the magic part. They don't understand that it's just creating a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
So one problem that I ran into too is I would have clients coming in who have done like these $150 macro programs or $200 macro programs for 8 weeks. And I'm not exaggerating. I had people who had done an 8-week cycle for $200 to $300, 2 to 8 separate times. So we're talking, they've invested now $2,400 into this. They've spent 16 to 64 weeks tracking their macros, and they still had never been taught why it even caused them to lose weight.
Yeah.
I said, do you understand why it made you lose weight? And they're like, No, they don't understand.
Yeah. I remember years ago.
Aram's got diarrhea now.
I remember years ago with people, because I think this might be what you're talking about, where there's not any education behind it, is when I was first learning about nutrition. I mean, this is going back probably 7 years. And I remember asking people, so like, what are your like calories? Like, what's your calorie goal? And they're like, I don't know. I just know my macros are this. So they never
knew,
never understood. And that's kind of what it sounds like what you're saying, where to me, I'm going, well, I think macros can be good, but I'm also explaining, educating, saying this is our priority. The calories are the priority. The protein is our next priority. And then kind of where those other numbers fall, if they're a little bit off, it's not the end of the world for the general person, not somebody. Some people need things to be more specific, but
what I also feel like, for, again, I always talk in terms of like general population person who wants to just look better, feel better, because for me, I don't coach like bodybuilders or professional athletes. So when I'm talking to that person, I almost feel like they should be graduated to macros instead of graduated from macros. You should meet these certain criteria first before we feel that you're ready to pay that close attention to your carbs and your fats and all that stuff. And then you can, so it adds an extra step. But I think for the average person who's like, I've done Weight Watchers, I've done keto, I've done intermittent fasting, I think I eat pretty healthy, but I don't understand. I think I have my metabolism shut down, all those things that we hear. Like, okay, let's try these simple steps first. The meal templates, managing the weekends, understanding the correlation between how you train and how you recover and why nutrition matters, food quality. And then when they get to a certain point, maybe it's like, all right, maybe now we're ready to start tracking calories and protein. And then if they want to take it to the next level, maybe we start tracking macros. But what I find is with the clients that I deal with, again, this is just what I see. When I start with macros, I run into all these hurdles anyway, and I'm trying to get them to go in this direction anyway. So I just kind of shortcutted and went, you hired me, you're paying me, a few $100 a month. Why not just let's get you on track with the habits I know I'm going to try to get you to 6 months down the line anyway, get a full baseline understanding of that. If you lose 20 pounds this way and you feel great, you may never need to track macros. But if you do and you get an interest in it, then yeah, cool, we can do it.
Let me bring up a devil's advocate point, because I think a lot of the people that consume our content are not wet behind the ears from the Midwest that have been fucking sitting in a drive-through for the last 20 years of their life.
Wow, that was offensive to people from that region of the country.
Good, and they can reach out to me at 4 Weeks to the Beach if they have a problem.
So Aram at 4weekstothebeach.com
if you want to email me any hate mail or like that.
.com.
But the reality is that general advice, like you said, will work for that 60% obese population, right? The person that the person who's the statistic, who eats 3 meals out a day, who hasn't seen the inside of a gym in a decade. If they have, it's because their doctor told them to go in there and stretch,
or it's they had to pick their kid up.
They may not even be able to do that. Well, I think it'd be like physically pick them up, or like
give them a ride. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not how. Yeah.
They were like inside playing basketball, and the parent had to go in and be like, John's playing basketball. He's not answering his cell phone. Can somebody page him?
So most of the people that are at least coming to me, and most of the stories that I'm hearing, do not start with, I don't know what a macro is, or I don't know what a protein is. That's the prop. So the problem that I'm seeing is not the people that know nothing, because the know nothing people are easy.
Yeah.
Give me the person who's 200 pounds overweight that doesn't know that a vegetable is a carb. Yeah. And that's a fucking 6-month transformation that I would beg to take tomorrow.
Yeah.
Don't give me the 150-pound woman who's been doing this shit for 3 years and she's fucking miserable still.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And when you can change that person's life.
Yeah.
You're the best coach on the fucking street.
I actually have a couple of clients who fit that avatar.
So talk about that one, because that to me is way more common than the person who knows nothing.
Yeah, agreed. So honestly, it's a pretty similar strategy. It's just you're explaining that to them in a different way. So for example, one of my current clients, she came in and she's tracked macros many times.
Start to use names and social security numbers, please.
Yeah, her home address is so she came to me. She's very active, works out 3 to 4 times a week, strength training, also teaches spin class. So she's doing that, 4 times a week. Has tracked macros before, is definitely not overweight, but is in that area of like, I'm fit, but I don't feel like I'm toned.
I
don't
should be
feel-
more fit
Yeah,
for
yeah,
all
yeah,
the stuff that
yeah.
I do. I shouldn't have this little pinch of fat around my 45-year-old belly for
Yes.
all the work
Yes.
I do. And it's like, no, you only have a little pinch because of all the work you
Because
do.
of all the work.
It would be a giant roll otherwise.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
go ahead.
it's so true. And that's the first thing, what I first realized with people is like, and again, I'm not talking to, when I'm saying this to coaches, I'm not talking to the coach who's like you, Jim, or you, Aram, who's like, let's teach these people macros and explain to them why this works and explain to them the nuance. I'm talking to the coach who's like trying to onboard like 75 people at like $150 a month, and it's just putting their stats.
Here's your
to a macro
macros.
calculator.
You are short on carbs. You got to drink apple juice, and
exactly.
they're just treating these people like lab rats.
So what I see with that avatar that you described most of the time is a tendency that they're not only just over exercised in general, but just over stressed in general.
Yeah.
Right. So like they're not prioritizing sleep. Usually their diet is very low carb. They're usually eating very, probably adequate protein, but they're eating a lot of fat. They're kind of tracking the wine they have at night, but they're not. And then in the weekends, they're not tracking at all, but they're not like binge eaters. They're not going to McDonald's. They're doing these little behaviors that just add up over time. And that goes back to what we were talking about before, is like how your nutrition and training relate. Is they're doing inadequate nutrition, high level of exercise, which then you hit a threshold, so you can't progress anymore. And then over time, again, we're not talking about over 4 weeks, we're talking about people doing this chronically for years. Your threshold of what your like max effort is starts to go down. But because your nutrition is not adequate, because you're not eating enough carbs, you're not getting enough calories, you're in that over restrict mindset, because as your threshold for training intensity drops, it never feels any easier. Yeah. So you don't even know you're half-assing it in the gym. You just know you're not seeing results, but all the workouts still feel hard because you're jumping from the treadmill to doing burpees, and you're doing spin, and you're doing these classes. You're not slowing down. And then if you want to talk about the mindset piece a little bit, you've now created this thought process around fitness where if I'm doing all this and I can't get lean, how could I possibly do less and get lean?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's scarier for them to eat a cup of rice than it is to just continue down the path they're on. So with that client, if I throw macro numbers at them, that scares them more. If I say, hey, you're eating 75 grams of carbs a day, we should work you up to eating 180 grams of carbs a day. They're already hesitant. So when I go with like more of the meal template approach for that person, it's a mental break from tracking because they've been doing it for years chronically. And B, it gives them just a tangible thing to shoot for. And I explained this in the presentation too, is like, even with this laid out GPS blueprint of like, this is how we can get to your goal, there still is going to be adherence issues, right? So there's still going to be there's still going to be adherence issues. So what I do is like, let's use that bandwidth instead of using the bandwidth towards like tweaking macro numbers. I like to use that bandwidth towards having real conversations with the people, of getting them to trust me to eat. Again, it sounds crazy to us, but trust me, eat the extra rice, you'll feel better. And then over time, their sleep improves, their energy improves, their workouts improve. But not to go off on too much of a tangent, the scale creeps up a little bit. So then we got to coach them on that. And again, when you have the macro numbers, they think the macros are like the end all be all. So then it's just a constant conversation of like, should I lower my macros? Should I change my macros? So I just kind of try to like get around those conversations, get to the good stuff, and make them feel better, understand what they're doing. And then when if they want to go back to tracking, then we could be like, hey, see, remember how good you felt? You were eating 180 grams of carbs a day. You didn't even realize it because you weren't seeing that red number in my fitness pal every day warning you're going over. And that really throws people off, I find.
Yeah, I just had a thought as you were saying that. It's funny how when people are, say, in a dieting phase or they're trying to lose weight, the scale will go up often. Yeah. Goes up and down, up and down. We know that, and a lot of times when I always try to explain to somebody, it's going to go up. You just kind of had like 3 days in a row down. You'll get to a point when you've been doing this long enough that you'll actually get excited when you get that bump in the scale, because that means over the next few days, you might get a new low if you're being, really on point with it. It's just funny to me how we know the scale goes up when the person's eating less calories trying to diet.
Yeah.
But the people will instantly panic if the scale goes up when they start to eat some more calories.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I got to go back. Well, when you were back where you were, it was
Yeah.
still going up on random days. It just kind of dawned on me right now. It's almost like that could be a good reminder to somebody who does bug out if they're trying to get more food in or more calories. Hey, the scale bumps up when you're
no
eating
matter
less
what.
calories. Yeah.
I say that to everyone too.
Ride it out.
I say all the time too. I was like, if you're 100% perfect with your nutrition across the board every single day, it's still going to fluctuate up from time to time. It's just it's unavoidable. But those are the conversations that I feel that are just what I found. They just have more impact on people than, you know, having to explain to them why adding the 15 grams of carbs, you know, is not going to make them fat. And I have empathy for them too, because what I found too is working with people long enough is it's not that they're like, it's not that they don't understand like what we're saying. It's just they don't realize they have control over the outcome. So they don't feel like their body is within their control, because for years they felt like they've been trying so hard and their body's not going in the direction they want. So when the scale starts to go up, it just feels like a lack of control. It feels like the steering wheel came out of their hands. Yeah. So it's not that they're being like, you know, I think sometimes, myself included, we like to like, you know, rib our clients and you know, politely joke with them and be like, oh, like if you're freaking out about the scale, like I make reels all the time where like I'll do like a dialogue and I imitate a client and like over exaggerate what they say. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like they're scared because they don't have control over the outcome. They think they don't have control. So when the scale spikes up, it's just triggering in that fear of like, oh my God, my body's going in a direction I don't want, and I'm doing something I'm uncomfortable with. This is very, very scary.
And this is the value of a coach, because we have the perspective of, I've seen this hundreds of times. This is completely normal. When you're doing it by yourself, anytime something goes in a different direction that you're expecting, then it's like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And so that's the value in a coach, is that we can tell you, no, this is actually a normal thing. I love when I say it ahead of time. Hey, you hit a new low. You've had some lows and you had a big drop. Expect that scale to go up over the next couple of days. And it might be a big jump, even if you were perfect, but that's a good thing. And you're going to see that it's going to start to drop. You predict those things ahead of time, and then they build more trust. But anybody who does struggle with these thoughts, who's listening and has not hired a coach, consider hiring a coach, just so that they can walk you through what things are happening that may be completely normal, because it happens to everybody. But when you're alone, you don't know that.
One of the easiest ways to describe any of this stuff is very much simply by putting it back on the individual. And that's something that I'm always, and maybe much to a fault, that's kind of just the way that I do things. Because I really do believe that there's just a very large fundamental lack of personal responsibility and participation in the process. You know, people always talk about trusting the process. Well, it's our job as coaches to illustrate what that process is going to be like, soup to nuts. So people should know exactly what they're getting themselves through, right? So people, and I've talked about this before, people are going to be sitting there fucking scrolling at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. They're pissed off. Their day was long. They just ate fucking 3 or 4 cookies. And now they came upon one of your posts, one of my posts, one of Jimmy's posts. They fill out our form. They go online. They want to schedule a phone call with us. And then tomorrow it's forgotten about. Yeah, because now life is back to being life, and that 5 minutes of shame or guilt or whatever led them to make that emotional decision to purchase or even inquire about coaching is gone. And what I want to kind of challenge folks that are listening to this is, you have to understand that coaching is a two-way street. There are really good, like, we're not going to bring somebody on the show that we don't believe is a good professional. So if you're looking at any of these people for help, trust that we've already vetted them and we know that they're going to help you. But they can't do anything for you unless you're actually willing to be open-minded and coachable. So I want you to talk about some of the characteristics of the folks that you get the best results with and what those characteristics are.
I think the biggest one that I always stress to clients, probably to the point where I'm like annoying the shit out of them on their onboard call, is communication.
Oh, dude!
Like I've heard you talk about this too, Aram, and I probably, you know, I'm very accessible, probably to a fault too, but I just think it's necessary. But like, if I have to like beg a client to like talk to me throughout the week, then that's usually not a great sign. Now, if you're communicating with me frequently, but you're not being that adherent to like the nutrition and the training, I think we still will get you where you need to go. So I think they have to just communicate and be willing to communicate on like a deeper level besides just like in their check-in form. I want to see like a paragraph. I don't want to see it. Yeah.
Like spill it. Like spill what the fuck is going on.
I just put that up this past week. I mean, the drastic difference, because I use Chronometer. I think Aram does too, because we're able to track macros, we're able to see how their day is structured, we're able to see the quality of their food. So it's kind of like this combination of what you're doing and maybe somebody who are strictly like macro coach type stuff. So we could see their food quality, we could see what time they ate and all that. But the people that leave notes, this is why I like Chronometer, because they can leave a note.
Yeah.
Drastically different result. The ones who were telling me about what's going on with their family, with their sleep, with their training, with the decisions that they made, celebrating the wins. Hey, I went off the deep end tonight. This was why. Huge. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
It's the communication piece is huge. I think another quality that is really resonates or that I see common amongst my most successful clients is that I guess it's hard to put like a specific word on it, but there is no like resell. They've already committed. They know they're going to stay. They don't ever bring up, I'm thinking about stopping or that. Like they already know it's probably going to take a while.
Yeah.
I think there's some clients who where like you're 4 weeks into a 12-week program and they're already pulling back, and that's a communication thing too, but it's more of just it sounds so corny, but like a vibe you get from the person where you're just like, okay, we're both have an unspoken agreement that we know we're in this for the long term. I'm not saying you have to stay with me for the next 5 years, but we know like, hey, we've got some distance to cover. I can go into your check-in, and I don't know if coaches, maybe I'm just like I said, I'm in my bubble, maybe I'm just a psychopath, but like I don't know if other coaches go through this too, but like I have less stress if I go into a client check-in knowing that they're on board for the long haul. Because when I see them,
because there's no scarcity.
Yeah, and or
you're not operating from a place of fear. You're operating from a place of confidence because you know that person has invested their energy, their time into you the same way you have. Because I think a lot of people think that like we're just like sitting around like waiting to do something, as opposed to like we're managing 40, 50, 70 personalities a day sometimes.
And their relationships.
Their
relationships.
Absolutely.
So imagine having but I think that that's really good what you said, because I don't know if that gets talked about enough, but I've had this conversation with a lot of people. And again, I'm not saying that this is the way you should do things if you're a coach listening to this, but like I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I'm a coach. That's pretty much all the bandwidth I have. I don't have much of a social life. I don't really, have any hobbies. But like, but think about it just from a numbers perspective. Let's say I have 30 online clients and I have a chunk of in-person clients, and each of these people are pulling a little bit from you each day. And they should, because you want them to communicate. But you're managing all of these. That's your job. Yeah, that's your job. You as the coach need to have some bandwidth left at the end of the day to give to your family, right? So I think a lot of times when a client isn't communicating, you're then spending extra energy trying to pull the words out of them. Yep. And then it's just more of a drain, because that one problem that we could have solved in 5 to 10 minutes gets dragged out for an entire week, because there's a lot, like you're not responding to me, you're not doing your check-in. I send you your Loom check-in video, and then I see it gets viewed on Tuesday, but I sent it on Friday. Like little things, or
that, they viewed it right away. You ask some questions about like, hey, there's nothing in here, like some questions about whatever, and then it's 3 days later that they're replying. It's like, I know you already watched it the day I sent it to you. Or nothing to say, like, thanks.
Or the next check-in form just comes in. It's like a week later, and there's no response. So not to drag that out too long, but like I think the main thing is the communication and a long-term mindset, and then also just a willingness to be coached and to make changes.
So what is that? So when you say a willingness to be coached, what kind of things are you seeing as far as like, are they just receptive to feedback? Are they able to get like down and dirty and in the weeds and emotional with you? Like what, like, I want you to be specific about that coachability part.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people some people just have never been coached by anything. Like they didn't do team sports.
Yeah.
They've always kind of just like, they went to school, they got their degree, they walked out, they got a job, and then that was it. They just sit at a desk and that's their life.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I think from my perspective, like coachability means that you're able to take guidance and then implement it. But over time, you build skills to then, call things on the field. Like I like to use a sports analogy, even though I'm not like a huge sports guy. But like I think all like the great athletes, right? They still had coaches, right? Like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. They had coaches. You have to have someone to like. You have to be willing to go like, all right, I'm the star of this movie. I'm the star of this team. But like I still have someone who's pursuing the same goal with me, and I'm willing to take their advice and not just be stuck in my ways.
And be aware that they maybe you are providing some information that was in their blind spot.
Yeah,
and also I think coachability is people who have some self-awareness.
Willing to dig into it. But a huge one I just see is that like, and I had this conversation recently with someone, and it was totally like non-confrontational one. It was just a matter of fact. But I was onboarding a client, and we were going over like the first week, this is what we need to focus on, and these are some tweaks I see like we could be making, because she's someone who's like, again, fits that avatar that you were describing earlier, like works out 5 days a week, but maybe nutrition isn't like on point. And she was just like, yeah. I was like, okay, let me know honestly, like, do you feel overwhelmed? Is there anything that you want to go over? And she's like, it's just it's just different, it's changed, so it's a little scary. And I just reminded her, I was like, just so you know, like, that's the whole reason you hired me, was for change. Right. So just remember that it's like, if I hire a coach, this is just how I usually react. If I hire a coach, whether it's for fitness, whether it's for business, whatever it is, I always go into it like, all right, I'm just going to do the thing. And then I've been doing the thing long enough. I've been in a trainer long enough, and I've been working out long enough that I can also then be self-aware and go like, okay, this is something I'm probably not going to stick to. So I need to, and then I can have that conversation. Like if I hire a business coach and he's like, send 100 cold DMs a day, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So like, give me the other stuffs in your playbook. Like that's one thing that I'm probably not going to do.
Well, and that's the beautiful part about coaching, and as it being a relationship versus being a dictatorship. Like I always tell everybody on the first call, I'm going to tell you what I think is best for you to do. Yeah. But I want to have discourse about it. If you like, and a lot of the people I work with, like I have probably 7 coaches right now that I coach who are actively coaching other people.
Yeah.
And they use me as accountability and knowledge base for their nutrition and training. And sometimes they don't know stuff that I know about training, or sometimes they don't do things the way that I do. But I want people to be very much involved in that process, because if I'm the one making decisions, you have no autonomy, and you're going to depend on me for the rest of your fucking life. Or you're gonna bounce from coach to coach because you're gonna think that coaching is the problem, or the coach was the problem. Yeah. Versus the fact that you just never actually sat there to absorb any information whatsoever. You just wanted to passively get through it to the other side where the result was, which is never how it's gonna work. It's a step-by-step, a cumulative process of knowledge and practice acquisition.
Yeah.
And if you want to expose a client's coachability real quick, or if you're listening, you can find out if you.
Well, I do this all the time. I put out a quiz every month.
Well, you just tell them. I mean, I have no problem. You're the director. You know what I'm saying? I'm the guide. You're the director. I'm the guide. What can you do this week?
Yeah.
What can you do? And they come up with it, and they still don't do it.
Yeah.
You have a total lack of self-awareness, and you're lacking coachability, because you're the one who came up with the plan. I'm here to hold you accountable to it because I support what that plan was based on the goals and all the other things and whatever. And you still don't do it.
Yeah.
What do you expect our plan to do if you can't even follow through with something you said you could do?
Yeah, I find a lot of times with coaching too, I mean, it's maybe not a 50-50 split, but there's definitely a good chunk of time that I'm lowering client expectations around what they can do versus what people expect from a coach is like, you push through it, you got to do it. My usually thing like is like, hey, what can you realistically do this week? And they tell me 3 things. I'm like, all right, let's just do one of them. Yeah. Like, let's just do that one thing.
Well, I think, and that's the difference when you're a good coach. Like, there's different personalities. I mean, there's clients, especially when you've been with them long enough, like what you were describing, that person who's kind of in it for the long haul. They're not the one that's like, why am I paying this much a month when I'm on vacation for 2 weeks this month. Because that's just part of it. It's like
yeah.
Are you trying to get your money back from Giant Fitness because you were on vacation for 2 weeks and couldn't go?
Yeah.
Like, this is just part of the process. You don't need the coach to rewrite your programming for the 2 weeks that you're on vacation either, unless it's something that you really want because you're really into it.
Oh,
but
it's funny that you say that, because like I literally just did that for a client. It's
Yeah.
like, but I just think so. One thing that
if they're really into it and that's something that they're like, I'm doing it, and that's what makes their vacation feel good, cool.
Yeah, sure.
If I do it and then you don't do the workouts, then I won't do it again. But I always tell people, I'll do it. I always tell people I'll do it for you. But I was like, but you have to do them. And then if they do them, like, okay, I'll do them for you again. But if you don't do them, I'm like, no, you're just going to go back to the ones I wrote you last time.
Well, here's a better way. This is what I do. I say, why don't you send me a video of the equipment that you're working with when you get to the hotel gym, and you tell me what makes sense, and I'll co-sign on it.
No, that's a good plan.
Teaching them.
I like that.
Because I want these fucking people to like graduate and be able to walk into any gym in the country or in the world and not have to sit there and fumble on their phone to their Trainerize app or to whatever other bullshit they're using to figure this shit out. Like, if you know how to do a single arm dumbbell row, and you know that that's a lat focused exercise, you should be able to replicate that on any piece of equipment on the planet. It shouldn't matter what implement you're using.
Yeah,
that to me is coaching. That to me means that human being has now acquired a skill set that they'll have for the rest of their life. If they know how to put together a plate, and they know what a protein and a carb and a fat source is, and a vegetable and a fruit source is, they can walk into a Denny's, they can walk into a fucking restaurant in the middle of Missouri and know what to order.
Could they walk into a Jersey Mike's?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They can intuitively eat, is what you're saying?
They can intuitively eat. Like at that, and
at that level, yeah.
What bothers me about the whole macro tracking or this or that is that if I was to pull this tool away from you, do you still know how to keep the guardrails up and know how to make sure, like, it doesn't just go from, well, I know that I eat meat, vegetables, and rice when I am home.
Dude, you're like, not to interrupt you, that's literally the reason why I came up with the meal template thing in the first place. Not that I invented by any means, but the reason I started really hammering it home
for it. It's yours.
But the reason why I started hammering it home with clients so much was because I did we were talking about this before we started recording. I've done like a lot of like group challenges in the past, and when you do like group challenges, you'll like, onboard 20 to 50 people at once, and you're signing. And when I was probably doing it, I used to do it the way I felt was the right way, but was probably the inefficient way for scalability, because I was giving everyone individual, like, guidelines, all this stuff. And what I did in one of my challenges, but I didn't tell them I was going to do this, but 6 weeks in, I said, okay, next week, no one tracked their food. And dude, I literally had people like really like, which is funny to begin with, because you could literally just track it and tell me you didn't, and I wouldn't fucking know. But like, I had people like genuinely concerned and like reaching out to me like outside of the group, being like, I am not on board with this. Like, I don't understand why you're doing. Like, I had to sit there and explain to them, like, and I run through this all the time. I've said it so many times now, it sounds boring, but I just tell people, like, understand that tracking is just a fucking tool. It's the habits you eat while you're tracking. So it's not like when you track chicken, rice, and vegetable, and you don't track chicken, rice, and vegetable, that one of them is fattening. Like, it's the same exact thing. So we have to like take that away. But that sounds funny to us, but a lot of people were just like, this is why I kind of got away from it. They're just like, they don't understand that. And I said, in the past, when you tracked food, did you eat a certain way? And they said, yeah. And I said, when you stopped tracking, did you eat a different way? And they said, yeah. And I said, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
It's not whether you tracked or not. It's the fact that as soon as you stop tracking, you eat a completely different way. Yeah. Like, that's the problem.
That's huge. That's huge. Huge.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Think about
people don't understand that.
It's no different than like, let's say you're very active at work. You're a school teacher, you're a nurse, you're taking 15, 20,000 steps a day. You don't need a Fitbit to tell you that you do that.
Yeah.
Like, your body's going to give you that credit. That credit's going to be accumulated by the physiology regardless. So if you eat, like, unless you're somebody who's like, well, I'm not tracking, today's a free for all, that means that's
the problem. Is that not tracking is a cheat day. It's a free for all.
Which by the way, if you really want to have fun with numbers and you want to see what a fucking cheat day will do to you,
Track it.
Go ahead and track it.
Dude, that used to be one of my favorite things to do. Was I would be having those big days, and I'd be aiming for I want to see if I get 5,000 today.
Oh, dude,
that's his dinner. You're not impressing him with those numbers, Adam.
Dude, I'm a disgusting human pile of dog shit when it comes to eating.
You know what? But that's funny that you say that too, because that's another conversation I like to have with clients when they're like, "Yeah, you don't understand. Like, I just love food," and I always say to them like, "No, you don't." Because I'll post like a picture of what I order when I go out to sushi. Like when I go out to sushi, I order sushi for 2 for me. Like that's how NS roll on the side.
That just reminded me of half.
They give me 3 chopsticks when I take out because they think it's for multiple people.
When we order sushi, we do get like how many chopsticks? Because I'll get like 15 pieces of sashimi, and we'll get like for me, and it's like how many chopsticks? 2, and they're like, just 2? Like, but we ordered food like
so racist.
It was.
Oh,
I know that was too far. Too far.
You don't love food. I don't know why I just started thinking of half baked. You're here for weed? You're not addicted to weed. You ever suck dick for weed? Bob Saget.
Bob Saget.
Dude, I have that conversation with clients all the time because they'll tell me that they love food, and I'll say like, "What are you eating?" They tell me what they're eating. I'm like, "That doesn't sound like you're enjoying any of it." And they're
no, they're they're mowing it down.
I love foraging.
So I like to use the breakdown of I don't hate it, but I think it's been overused as like the whole like 80-20, like that people are like, oh, 80-20, you gotta be 80-20. And I
80-20 will still leave most people pretty fat.
Yeah, because what people think, as you guys have talked about this too, is they think that 20% of the times means they can go way over their calories. So
they think 20% of the day, not 20% of their calories.
Well, I had this conversation with someone recently, and again, they were like, wow, I never thought of it like that. And so, maybe it'll resonate with someone else, is I said, if you're doing like 80-20, 80% of the time, I just like my food to have some purpose to it. Now, intention, and then 20% of the time, I use purpose because then I can say 20% of the time pleasure, and it's a good, what do you call that?
PP.
PP. As a PP. Acronym. Yeah. No, not acronym, but
it's not acronym.
Adam loves the PP.
What the fuck is?
I know exactly.
Alliteration.
There you go. Yeah, alliteration.
Why is the one person who's not from this country that knows that?
Because you have a degray in business and you were on Wall Street and you're so important.
I am. Fucking school teacher. Servant.
The way I framed it to this person was that, like, if you eat pizza and it fits in your calories for the day and you meet your protein needs, that still is your 80. That's not in your 20. Nope. But in their mind, they were thinking, 80% of the time I eat chicken and broccoli, 20% of the time I get to eat pizza. No, it's 80% of the time your main focus is controlling your calories and meeting your nutritional needs. 20% of the time, which if you spread that out across a year, comes out to, I think, like 70 days.
It's a lot of fucking days.
70 days of the year. You can just be present and enjoy food without being concerned with calories, not with the intention to overeat. It's just, if that were to happen, it's not a big deal. Yeah. And that mindset switch actually worked for me as a coach too, because I used to be the guy 10 years ago who would be cheat day. I would have my cheat day and be trying to slam all these calories in one day, because then I was like, I'm not allowed to eat this food for another week. Now I'm much more relaxed. I use the meal template approach myself. I don't track my food. And I've been seeing much better results with that, from the standpoint of I can now free up that bandwidth to focus on other things. But that's because I earned that opportunity by being consistent for so many years.
I think people don't understand how bad. Hey,
Go ahead.
I hope you have diarrhea before you land on.
I've gone 3 times since we started recording.
In the crevice, of his couch.
Yeah, he's actually sitting on a couch. No, I think
I'm sitting on a toilet right now.
Because I track all my big ass nasty days, I can see how fast fat calories will add up. Right? Like if I get the crumble cookies, I'm tracking them. If I get the General Tso's chicken, I'm tracking.
Nauseous every time you give the list of things that you might get.
Dude. Oh, you watch. This week is going to be fucking ham.
I will be watching it. I can't.
We're going to be in Austin, Texas, bro. It's going to be fucking no holds barred.
I can't.
I'm going to be eating. It's bulking season just this week.
No, that's one thing that I have gotten significantly better at when I am traveling or anything like that. I'm like shit break from American Pie. I like having my own toilet. I do not like using public bathrooms. I do not like being uncomfortable and not knowing what's going on.
Well, there's
People
no
go to a
bidet.
place
That's
like
the problem. He's
Austin
too used to a bidet.
or yeah, bidet. I mean, I'll have my wet wipes, but
Will you bring the bidet? We can attach it to the Airbnb toilet.
oh,
Or should we just order? We'll just order one on Amazon.
How big is one?
It's small. It's like
it's like a little attachment to it. You could
the thing that sticks out the
it's
side.
not like a whole toilet seat.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it just goes.
It's like half the size of it. It's like maybe half a toilet seat in terms of the way the whole thing sticks out. But we'll do anyway. I don't like being uncomfortable. I tend to eat foods that will digest well when I'm traveling, because I don't like being uncomfortable when I'm traveling. So I could give a shit if I'm in Nashville and everybody's like, you gotta get this deep fried chicken sandwich. It's the best in Nashville. Sure it is. I'm good. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I want to enjoy my time. So that is something that has drastically changed for me.
As me too. What I've learned too is that, wanting to feel good. And also just because for a lot of clients, when they give themselves permission that this isn't bad food, I find that they tend to overindulge less. And one thing I do say to some clients, which, is maybe controversial, whatever, for people to hear, but I feel like for me, having a kid has made eating healthier easier rather than harder.
How come?
And the main reason why is because I'm aware that he's watching what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So
is it in between diarrhea bouts?
In between diarrhea bouts, yeah. So like for example, like my son pretty much eats what we eat. Ever since he was 6 months old, we did like baby led weaning. So like he ate salmon and broccoli. Those were like the first foods that he was tasting. The first food he ever had was a big piece of broccoli, and he like hysterically cried when we tried to take it away from him because he just liked it so much. So anyway, what I would, on the rare occasion that we do bake cookies or have birthday cake, I don't want to like have him feel like, oh, when we eat this, we just gotta like shove it down our mouth. Yep. And me, as a kid, I remember like my mom would bake cookies, she'd put it on the table, and before me and my brothers could grab one, she would go, don't finish it all in one sitting. And we would get legitimately upset. Like, what the fuck are you what? Like, we just can't finish this all in one sitting. Like, that was our intention sitting down, was to finish the cookies. So anyway, for me, knowing that he's gonna act out what I do, that makes me just more conscious of the food I put in my mouth and the choices I make. And even if it's like a random night and I'm like, oh, I could really go for some ice cream right now, I just don't, because I'm like, I'm not gonna either eat it and be like, you can't, or then I don't want him to eat it, so then I don't eat it.
You put him to bed first and then you go.
Then you gorge, or I just don't keep it in the house. But for me, that's helped. And I notice with a lot of people, they struggle with, oh, my kids don't want to eat the way I eat. And I'm like, well, not to be a dick, but that's your fault, because you've put them on this path of eating crap food. Yeah. So, for me, it's made it easier, because I'm like, I don't want him to, feel like it's normal to eat half a pizza and sit on the couch like, oh my God, my stomach hurts so bad.
I love that perspective. I think that's so important. I think when you start to emphasize the importance of digestive health and just feeling good versus just looking good, because the reality is like most people will never reach their aesthetic. If you're listening to this and that pisses you off, like, that's just the reality. I've spent 25 years. I know I won't. Like, I'm not gonna look like the Rock. No, like I don't. Yeah. And I've even had.
I mean, I will, but that's fine. We all
because you're a genetic anomaly, and you're essentially probably the most handsome 45-year-old in the tri-state area.
Oh, if not the entire world. Eastern Standard Time, possibly Central.
You're not Pacific. You're fucked. You're fucked out here. Like, there's no you are a dime a dozen out
it's
here.
not worth living that way.
No,
for the most part, and most people don't really have their head wrapped around, I might be really strict for a period of time to get this physique for a short period of time. Yep. People think in their head they're gonna get to this physique, and then they go back to being very lackadaisical and keep this physique.
Fam. You got to keep it up.
Yeah, they see their lean friend eating whatever they want out to eat and being like, it's not fair, not having any awareness of what the person's rest of their day in life looks like. Looking at what does their training actually look like? What does their eating routine look like? They have no clue. So then they want to just judge them like, oh, it must be nice. You have no clue.
Yeah, it must be nice. It
Yeah.
must be so
Unless
easy because
somebody's
your genetics are so sick. I'm like,
Yeah.
bitch, it's 200 milligrams of testosterone. Fuck out of here.
Yeah. Well, I think
Well,
the
yeah, I
stuff
think
that
you. No,
okay.
go ahead.
I was gonna say the stuff that you're talking about. I think it just shows that there can be different strategies that coaches are taking, and when you're passionate about the strategy, it's going to feel like less work as the coach. You're not
Oh, yeah.
repeating things like you were saying when I was doing this, then I was trying to dig him out of this hole and so now this is the way that I'm doing it. When you're passionate about the way you're delivering in the information, the person's going to receive it much better, and I could have a different approach to some of the things, and it's that it works for me, and we're still sending the same message,
Oh
but it's
yeah,
just a different way of
100%.
tracking that way of doing it. So I think it's great for people out there to go, all right, there are different ways to do it. There isn't just there is no best way. There are these
Yeah,
different ways
there's no
because
best
we're
way.
saying the same stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I like to always, because I feel like there's not a lot of like nuance on like the internet. I always try to say to people, like, I'm not saying that like tracking your macros is bad or evil by any means.
Yeah.
It's just you have to go into it with a proper mindset. And one question I like to ask clients too is, I always ask, and it's more of a deeper question. They have to think on it. We have to kind of develop it over time. But I always try to cue them on, like, I want you to picture what you actually want your life to be like.
Yeah.
Like after you reach this goal. Because if you tell me that I want to be able to, eat out 3 days a week and drink 3 nights a week, it's not my job to steer you from that. It's my job to let you understand, okay, but then that's a different goal that we're setting. Because if you want that lifestyle, you may have to settle for 75% of the results that you want. Yeah. It doesn't mean that we can't get there. Now, so for me, for example, right now in this season of life, my main focus is staying healthy and being able to keep up with my workload and my son and be present at home and my wife. So for me, my aesthetics is not like my top 3 priority, but my fitness is top 3.
I couldn't tell.
I think it's funny that you say that. I'm just like, I'm sure it's just like you guys too. We all have our own body dysmorphic, tendencies. But for me, like to give you an example, I've been reading a lot on and following a lot of guys who are talking about like how important, like, your basic like cardio conditioning is for your longevity, right? Like sure, Jason Brown, who you have at the coaching summit, he's big on this.
And even your erections. Cardio is important
things
for
like
harder
that, right?
erections. Yeah.
Huge for
so
erections.
I made it a goal this year that I had to prioritize my conditioning. But in order to do that, I couldn't just add that to my normal workload of workouts. So I had to supplement by going, okay, I'm going to do 3 lifting days and 2 conditioning days. And that's the allotted time I have to work out. The side effect of that is I can't expect to look like The Rock at the end of 8 months. But I understand that going in, and I'm not sitting there every day, like, rubbing my head going, I don't understand what's happening. So it's like, that's kind of like a nerdy trade-off. But for a lot of people, it's like, all right, hey, if you don't want to track on the weekends and you want that to be your life, that's fine. Yep. But then we have to have these basic principles in place.
Yeah. Just have realistic, logical, reasonable expectations that don't there's the illusion around aesthetics is so misguided. And it's been so misproported by so many people on social media, the regular media. It's that tip of the iceberg principle. Everybody sees the tip of the iceberg. They don't see the 90% that's sitting below the surface. Yeah. The amount of sacrifice, the amount of times we have to say no to shit, the parties we don't go to, the drinks we don't have,
the friends we don't have,
the sweat that we're pouring inside the gym, the sweat that we're not pouring inside the gym because progressive overload doesn't leave you all that sweaty all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just you walk in, you get a fucking nasty pump, you walk out, not much really has changed. You're just that much better than you were the other day because you did a half of a rep of a lat pull down more than you did the week before. That's the shit people don't want to see. It's every time that you're making rice in the fucking rice cooker. It's every time that you're reordering that beef. It's every time that you're making more grocery orders to show up at your door. While everybody else is finding every reason not to do these things, the solutionists, which is what I call us, we're a group of solutionists, we're finding solutions to these basic human problems that everybody wants to cite as a problem. But none of these problems are real. These problems are manufactured purely because you are not willing to think outside the box. And if it was as important to you as your job, and if it was important to you as money, and if it was as important to you as your fucking kids were, you would have no problem thinking outside the box to get this shit done.
Yeah, I have that conversation with people a lot. Whenever someone says they're not motivated or they describe themselves as lazy or they can't do it, I always ask them, how long have you been at your job for? And they'll usually say like 15 or 20 years. I'll say like, how many days have you gone to work and been super motivated or were like awesome? And they're like, very little. But the way I frame it for people, as I kind of run them through this real quick, is I'll just go, listen, like the reason why you're able to show up at your job every week for the last 15 years and still do it, even though it sucks, and you've told me that you hate it, is because, there's a perceived value. At the end of the week, you're going to get a paycheck, right? You understand the reward for you showing up. There's a consequence / accountability. If you don't show up, someone's going to fire you and you won't get a paycheck.
Exactly.
And there is something in you. There is a baseline level of belief that you can complete the tasks you need to do at work. Those are the 3 things you need to do to accomplish all these fitness goals. You need to understand the value, the reward at the end. You need to understand the consequence and have accountability of, what's going to happen if you don't do this. And you need to build up some belief that you can actually accomplish it. And I think most people, they know the reward, but it's like someone saying, hey, if you work for 5 years, you can make $1 million. They're like, I don't want to do 5 years of work. Right.
Yeah. It's like, as you're saying that, I'm picturing like that person who's okay not showing up to work and getting fired because they live with their parents. So the consequences aren't very real.
Well, the problem is there are no consequences.
They're in denial of the consequences until all of a sudden those consequences. I mean, even they're okay with the consequences because they're comfortable with them. It's not a pain point enough for them. It's like, I'm living with my parents, if in terms of the financial analogy. And then all of a sudden the parents get evicted. Now you're like, oh shit, I should have kept that job. All of a sudden now there's a pain point.
But there's no 911 emergency for not having aesthetics. There's no 911 emergency for having some belly fat. None of these
absolutely,
things are
but most of the
problems.
people have a lot of other things. They've just slowly descended into it where I am tired walking upstairs. I don't like it is too much work going for a walk. I need help lifting up basic stuff. I'm uncomfortable in my clothes, so I don't go out anymore. People are always talking about like, oh, I want to look good naked. Like most people don't even feel comfortable in their clothes. There are consequences, but they're not at that point where the consequences might be so severe.
Well, the consequences are like the result, right? They're small and they slowly progress over time.
Yeah.
So, it's just like a split in the road and they're just slowly going in one direction. I saw this one time too. It was like, if you start making different decisions, like now the split in the road doesn't look that great, but then as you do it over time, it just gets greater and greater.
Yeah.
And most people, they just make that split, they're in their 20s. And you've heard this all the time too. It's like, oh, when I was in my 20s, I could eat whatever I wanted and not gain weight.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's what I was talking about this week. They're misremembering, and they're also not acknowledging that behavior led to where they are now. Like that's what I've been talking about the last few days on social media. They keep saying that. It's like you're misremembering how much movement you had throughout your day. You were in college, maybe you were an athlete, maybe you weren't. You were just running around. You were doing more fun things with your friends.
You also can't live your whole life saying, I should be able to get away with what I used to get away with. That's like being like, man, I drove drunk 100 times, and on the 101st time I got caught, I used to be able to get away with this.
Yeah, now I can't drive drunk. It's a great.
It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right that you did it in the past. You just were able to get away with it, and then you accumulated these side effects over time.
Oh God, I used to drive drunk so goddamn much. It's a fucking wonder why I'm still alive. I have no idea. I got pulled over
celebrating your horrible.
I got pulled over on New Year's Eve, blacked out driving with a sober person in the passenger seat.
Wow.
And the cop literally looked at me and asked me where I lived, and I pointed.
He said Russia.
I literally pointed out the window, and he's like, "What are you pointing to?" And I was like, "I live over there." And he's like, "Where's there?" And I was pointing at Cheshire, Connecticut, which was northwest of where I was at in Stamford, Connecticut, and that was my directional beacon. So awesome. If you think you got fat problems, I got you beat, folks.
He's always a one-upper. Always a one-upper. Let's do. I think we definitely. I think it's time to wrap it up. Adam's got a kid he's got to get to.
Yeah, I think dinner's probably on the table.
Hopefully, there's no poop on
he's
the
got
table.
shit on lockdown at home. I like that.
Yeah,
I usually actually cook on Tuesdays, but I was able to.
Do you have to tell her twice, or does she understand what the first smack?
What do you tell a woman with 2 black eyes? Is the joke that he's referring to. Nothing you haven't told her twice. Anyway.
Yeah, well, hey,
that's to our 99%.
It's funny. I know it's funny. I'm I'm a pretty in shape dude. I've got 2 sleeves of tattoos. But yeah, my wife's not scared of me. I'm scared of my wife. Definitely.
As you should be. Anything that bleeds for 7 days and doesn't die is a
All
scary
right,
motherfucker.
get a new joke.
Hey, listen, the ladies like it. That's power. It's empowering. It's empowering to know that you can bleed for that long and still be okay.
They're not bleeding.
I mean, there's some discharge.
But it's basically just the uterine lining being flushed out through contractions of the uterus.
I think it's called alliteration.
You know what the best joke about that is?
Accliteration. What?
Why? I'm so happy it's at the end of the episode because I hope somebody doesn't hear this. But
my father's still listening.
Oh, he
doesn't miss. He doesn't miss a minute.
Anytime that a woman ever has a problem with having sex during their period because they're uncomfortable during, or because it might leave a mess, the best response is a warrior doesn't mind having a little blood on his sword.
Jesus Christ.
And we can end right on that note. But if you guys,
man.
you should appreciate that, because we're trying to enhance the female experience.
I hope that my discomfort with most of the things that you say comes through.
I can't wait.
Over the speakers of their.
I can't wait to send this podcast to my mom.
Oh, she's gonna love it.
Yeah, she's gonna love it. She's gonna love it. Just if she has any problems, just tell her that I have a suggestion box in my DM specifically for this.
Jesus God.
Oh
yeah. She'll love it. She'll be like, "You're not gonna be on there again, are you?" Jesus. That one guy was horrible. I mean, he sounded.
I'm not sure she knows how to listen to a podcast, so I think we're good.
No, my parents don't either, so we're safe.
The one guy sounded like he had great delts and traps. The other guy sounded like a little bitch, but they weren't appropriate at times.
I could hear his butt chin come through the microphone.
Jesus, did you want to ask him a final question? Adam probably knows what it is.
What did we have from the last time? Do we have anything?
Oh, that.
Do we have anything from the last time?
Yeah, I think.
Hold on.
If you could eat one animal for the rest of your life, what would you choose? And this is including like the byproducts.
Nose to tail, to tail, and any byproduct that comes off of it.
Ooh, I guess you'd have to go with a cow, right?
That's what I feel.
I feel like that's the most.
Yeah,
that's the most options. Yeah, that's most versatile. Yeah.
If I don't eat an egg or chicken ever again, I'd be fine.
I'd be fine too.
Yeah. I could be fine without chicken. I like eggs, but I could ditch them.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, if I had to choose. Was that Mike Dola? That question?
No, was that no, I think that was Trexler.
Was that Trexler?
I think that was Trexler. Yeah.
Do you have like a Rolodex of questions?
Well, now we have to ask. What do you have to? We have to ask you now. What do you want us to ask our next guest as a final question?
That's
too much
pressure. I didn't know this is. I was gonna say this is a switch up. I was prepared for the final meal question.
Final meal. That's what I'd rather just ask. This all of a sudden became we're switching.
No, because you sound like a fucking anorexic to me. You're not going to be interesting.
You sound like an anorexic.
Maybe
he'll go back. He'll pick a meal from back in his heavier days.
Yeah. So tell me about the 5,000.
He knows the final meal. He can text us the question if he thinks of one.
The final meal.
Bye. I'm just kidding.
The final meal with the album, right? That was the question.
Yeah.
The final meal was definitely going to be a sushi spread, with like a Reese's peanut butter cup sundae to finish off.
Nice.
Ooh, the sundae is a good touch.
I would have a tequila on the rocks with it. A good tequila.
Really? Not like a fancy margarita?
Yeah, I like margarita. I guess is my final meal, maybe, but I like to sip the tequila while eating the sushi. And then this probably sounds super lame, but it's not an album, but I have a playlist on my phone, which is like all these like they're legit good songs that like I used to play for my son when he was a baby that he really liked, but they're not like kids songs. They're like acoustic type covers and stuff like that. And I would probably listen to that and then just like, cry until I got the lethal injection.
What give us one song off the acoustic album?
Well, it's not an acoustic album.
Well, the playlist.
Cover. Jack Johnson, Better Together.
No.
Better when we're
He seems more like a Body as a Wonderland type of guy.
First of all, John Mayer crushes live.
John Mayer is amazing live. The problem with John Mayer is the way that he breathes things is something that bothers me.
So here's one from the playlist. Shallow by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper.
Oh, from the movie?
From the movie.
Yeah.
No One by Alicia Keys is a
Which
good
one?
No One.
Oh yeah, No One's a great song.
The acoustic version is
never heard it,
good.
but I'll have to check that out.
Oh, you have to check that out. And then he's got his favorite song when he was like a baby that he used to fall asleep to all the time was "Shallow" or "I'm With You" by Avril Lavigne.
Oh, I love
Avril
back.
Avril
in the
Lavigne's
day.
got some. I rediscovered her when he was born. I was like, she's got really good songs.
Yeah. My son, when he was around that age, he loved Judah and the Lion. And I'm take it all back. You like that song?
Yeah. Okay, I've heard that song.
And he likes Strumbella's I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go.
Nope.
I've heard that
I'll
song
sing
before.
the whole song, Aram, until you figure it out. Okay.
you could lullaby me to death tomorrow night. How about that?
I'm gonna hum about you.
Please do.
To bed. Anyway, listen, thanks Adam, man, for coming on. I think the perspective that you gave, even from practical things to different ways of getting out of their own head, I think was great. So I really appreciate you coming on, man. And if you're not following Adam, obviously his stuff is in the show notes. Make sure you give him a follow. He's got great analogies, great practical information you can start implementing any day. And just those kind of mindset shifts that we all need. Don't forget, code OSL at curednutrition.com, code ARAM at Legion Athletics, and get your tickets for the Real Coaches Summit in Las Vegas for $748 while tickets last.
Or else I'll